This all started for me and for my family, for my husband and my son. We were having all these family conversations about what it means to have a virtuous career. What are the ways we actually should spend our time here on Earth? And we decided that the absolute most important thing that humans need is better education process. And we thought what we want to do is we want to teach people in a way that as they're learning the process of learning, so that then they can apply it to their own problems whenever they occur. And we right away became, again, a bit radicalized, deciding that we're not so much obsessed with content, the delivery of specific areas of content. Say you just had a problem that you wanted to solve. How would you solve it? And how can we help you learn to solve it better and better? How can we help you learn to be a problem solver? So imagine this mission. We're trying to go to this metal asteroid that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And the one thing that I noticed right away was that when everybody had a goal that everyone had in common, like we're going to build this mission, then everybody came to the table or the team with all of their different disciplines, and everyone was respected and everyone was listened to. And it took a little bit of cultural work on the team, but the point is that in the real world, so to speak, when you're working at a job or you're working in administration or something like that, then you need all the different people at the table. It's not just the scientist and the engineer, but it's also the person who does graphic design and the marketer and the person who keeps schedules and the project manager and the person who does the budgets and the finances. And so I was really enamored of this idea of building teams where everybody's discipline is really valued. And then I thought about what actually happens in the classroom, which has nothing to do with that whatsoever. In a classic classroom, but in a classic kind of stand and deliver classroom like this one, if I were just going to lecture to you guys, there's no part of the learning that actually resembles what actually happens in real life. And so I had this idea that maybe we could teach more like what actually is needed in real life. So that the majority, depending on which source you take, the vast majority of jobs that undergraduates will have when they leave their undergraduate career 4 years from now, say, do not actually exist at the current time. And so not only are we not teaching people how to go into the workforce, we don't even know what they're going into the workforce for. And so a nice goal from my point of view would be absolutely let people be motivated by the content that they love, because what's better than that? I want to learn about the stars. I want to understand what a galaxy is. I want to know what the edge of our universe is. Those are great motivators. But then the people have to be learning the skills that will actually allow them to be really successful in the workforce. And I would argue that they are not being taught now almost anywhere. And even if we talk about them, they might be kind of following along second to the content. And so I want to assert that people need to arrive at the job ready to innovate and ready to learn, which is often not the case because we're so used to having everything kind of given to us instead of going and getting it. And so let's teach learning and problem solving explicitly instead of sort of hoping they get picked up along the way, which is normally what happens. And so that's the first thing that I really want to focus on, is how to teach problem solving, or an idea we have about how to teach problem solving. And then this is actually a quote of my friend and colleague Evgenia Shkolnik, who's working on this project with me. Learners need to abandon passive acceptance of delivered content and become comfortable with and motivated to solve unsolved problems. So here's a little summary that we actually made for Beagle for one of our pitches, but I think it kind of tells the story. So higher education trains content knowledge, but not what we're calling 21st century skills. So if you look at content, institutions teach it, graduates are assessed by it, and employers hire for it. So we're good there. But then critical thinking, teamwork, and problem solving, which are three really, really important aspects of being successful in any job or anything you ever want to do in your career, generally are not taught explicitly at institutions. Graduates are not assessed in their ability to do these things. But employers really want it. If you look at the big employer surveys, these are among the top things that they're looking for, is the ability to work in teams, to give and take peer feedback, something that we practice very little at universities, to be independent problem solvers, to have a sense of agency. And we kind of hope that for the best students, they figure this out along the way, but we don't teach it explicitly. So I think we need to teach it explicitly. And of course, there are two big challenges to changing the way you teach. One is finding the time that's necessary to change your curriculum, and that's hugely time consuming. It's ridiculously time consuming. And then no standard assessments for these skills. You know, how do you judge whether somebody gives or takes good peer review? So these are things we're trying to actually develop, but not summative exams, not you stop. Does this happen at work? You know, you work for a month and a half and then you take a day off and you just sit an exam on what you've done for the last month and a half. Like, this doesn't happen in real life. And what actually happens in real life is that you get judged every day by your performance and all the things you do. And so we're trying to do these things, formative assessments, that actually can happen every day in a natural way rather than summative assessment. And so our sort of radicalized idea is there has to be a goal. What's the goal of the semester? What are you actually trying to find out or learn? One of the things we figured out really early on with some of the research we did in Beagle Learning is that the way that we, the experts who are setting out the syllabus and describing how education should happen, think about a topic and order the topic is the way someone who's been thinking about it for decades and is an expert orders it. It turns out it is almost never the way the novice learner actually naturally asks the questions. And in fact, we can't make that up anymore because it's not in our heads. And we've done actually research around this, which is so fascinating. So what's the big goal for the semester? So for example, last semester we taught a course and the title of the course is, What Will the Moon Look Like After Settlement? And so that brings in many, many interdisciplinary questions. You know, who is settling the moon and why? What does the engineering look like? What kind of in situ resources are needed? What can you see from the Earth? All these different questions that are sociology and biology and engineering and science. And this turns out to be a nice kind of goal to have. So we set the goal for the semester. And then on the first day, I just give a little piece of content. So in this case, I just gave a 20-minute lecture on what's the geology of the moon to kind of get people going. And then I asked, what is your natural next question? And so this is this phrase that we've developed, the NNQ, the natural next question. So we're taught all the time to ask questions about the content we just learned. And that's not this kind of question. This is the kind of question you ask to take one step closer to your goal. What's the next question I need to ask to get one step closer to understanding what is the moon going to look like after settlement? So what's the question? And so if you follow this process over and over again, bit of content, ask a question, find some content, ask a question, you end up building a mind map. And so at the end of each class, we ask all the students, what are your natural next questions? And then we write them on the board and then we vote on them. And whatever question gets chosen, that becomes the topic for the next week. And in the beginning, the instructors, go find papers to give to the students to read. And after a couple of weeks, when they've also learned how to find good papers and understand the difference between a peer-reviewed article and a non-one, or a good journalistic source and a bad one, then they find their own papers and report back. And the miracle of this thing is I get people from all different disciplines in the classroom, undergraduates, freshmen to seniors, and graduate students. And by the third week, everyone is reading peer-reviewed papers outside of their fields and understanding that you're not going to understand the whole thing. And this is the process of learning. You learn what you can, you take what you can, you try to find some sort of source, you find a little piece, you keep going. Maybe you have a wrong turn. Maybe you decide this wasn't actually a fruitful direction, we're going to go back and try again. And then you have this amazing metacognitive step, and there's beautiful research that shows that if you draw out graphically, make an infographic of what you've learned, then cognitively you connect it to other knowledge in your head and you're much more likely to remember it in future. So these courses have been unbelievably successful and it's so fun to teach. And so this is kind of our inquiry style. So we define the goal for the class, ask a question, do some research, summarize and communicate, ask a question, and by going through this learning cycle, then we're building up the mind map, and then periodically summarize and distill it. And so at midterm, instead of having a midterm exam, we ask everybody to come in and then we do a big whiteboard infographic of everything that we've learned so far. And then we do the same thing. In fact, the last class for the class I'm teaching right now is on Thursday, and we're going to do the giant summary of everything. So here's the natural next question idea, and this is the first thing that we're doing a formative assessment on. And I'm just like so excited about this, the question productivity index. So the question became, if what we want people to learn more than anything is how to ask that natural next question, because that's the question that makes you a leader. It's the question that takes your research group into the right direction suddenly instead of the wrong direction. It's the question that allows you to pursue your own research. But we want to know, can we actually rate how good they are? Can we give somebody a score on their question asking? Can we help them become better and better at it? So this is how we're thinking about it. So there's our goal, and here's our content, and then here's our natural next question. And so we've developed three scales in a rubric for the natural next question. And the three are scale, relevance, and articulation. These are the three ways we judge these questions. And so scale is just the size of the question. Is it too big a question to answer in whatever our unit of time is? You know, is it something that we probably could find one paper and get something of an answer in a week? Right now, that's the right scale for us. But depending on what you're trying to do, it might be, is this the research question I'll pursue all semester? Or, you know, but if it's something you could just look up on Google and get the answer right away, that scale is probably too small. So there's some correct scale there. And then relevance is it pointing right toward your goal, or is it actually off at some angle? And the last one, articulation, is just, would everyone in our group understand this question to mean the same thing? So now what we're doing is we're scoring, we are training a neural net to do the scoring automatically. So here's the QPI rubric, and this is free online if anybody's interested in it. So relevance and what the descriptions are, scale and what the descriptions are, and then articulation and what the descriptions are. And so I'll leave you with this little picture of a baby elephant. And it just made me think, wouldn't it be great if all of the curiosity and the question asking and the passion that we all feel when we're the equivalent of this baby elephant's size wouldn't get beaten out of us by summative exams, and instead we could actually follow our own inquiry and learning cycle through our lives. So thank you so much.